Hello dear viewers, I'm glad to welcome you on Sotnik-TV. Strap yourselves in as our today's guest is Andrey Piontkovskiy, a known political analyst. Hello Andrey. Good day Alexander. Please tell us some words about the situation in Syria. On one side we see Assad's regime along with its allies Russia and Iran conducting genocide in Idlib governorate. On the other side, we see the situation changing after Turkey involvement. The regime forces are taking casualties in military equipment and over 100 men were lost during the past week. Also, 2 helicopters were downed. Is the war between Russia and Turkey coming? Is Moscow really unable to protect the ally? You described the situation in Syria correctly. What they have there is civilian genocide. That thing has been on for many years. With a great sadness for my state and myself being the citizen of that, I must name the major criminal and the major executor of Sunni community in Syria. He is bigger than General Soleimani, who has recently been terminated justly for his crimes. He is even a bigger criminal than Assad himself. I'm talking about Vladimir Putin. He declares proudly that his so-called aerospace forces are now training at much less cost for the budget than would be required on the territory of Russia. By means of that, he has killed way more civilians. He keeps doing that, and I don't see his reasons. I start suspecting some incredible torturous sadism. Why would he care about that Idlib? He has ruined Aleppo as well as other de-escalation territories. He attacks civilians, hospitals and cities, explaining that with fighting terrorism. Idlib is the last area I wouldn't name that a safe zone, but such was the term they used in that so-called peace treaty. Lots of refugees came there from Aleppo and the rest of Syria. You see, even that criminal terrorist regime of Iran is now trying to interfere some way to affect its ally Syria and to become a mediator between Assad and Turkey, while Putin seems to be making his ally to destroy Idlib civilians. That was clear a long time ago, during all those triple conferences of Iran, Turkey and Russia. All the time Erdogan would mention civilians present there. Sure thing, as those people are ethnically close to Turks. They're called Turkomans. Putin once said that he had never heard of such people. Local resistance squads commonly supporting Turkey are now trying to protect those people, while Putin says that no one can cover under civilians' protection ideas when fighting against terrorism. That is a moral perspective, but no morality can be discussed with a war criminal who has blood on his hands. And from the perspective of military value, let us be honest and say that Turkey didn't protect them that well. The US betrayed those resistance groups of moderate opposition that were granted support. like was Turkey, betrayed its supporters consistently, as Erdogan has more interest in his own domestic Kurd genocide than in resisting Sunni genocide by Assad. Yet there are lines he simply can't cross, as that would result in an outcry among Syrian politicians. Why would they need that worsening? Everyone is discussing a possible military conflict between Russia and Turkey. In fact, it's already on. The shooting is on over there. Helicopters are downed, as well as planes plausibly operated by Russian pilots. Our special forces and other troops on the ground support Assad's attack on the last refugees and rebels enclave resisting him. Let's get away from all the details of that Syrian drama. Putin is the initiator of the growing conflict between Turkey and Russia. He could easily find some mutual understanding or an illusion of that with Erdogan. But he deliberately puts Erdogan in some unbearable situation from his inner political perspective, making him use some serious troops. And I cannot understand why Putin is doing so. Turkish military has solid logistics there. That leads to quite serious losses among Russian military. And what is the purpose of that? Is it killing as many Sunni people of Syria as possible? I'm not asking why would Russia and Russians need that, but why would Putin want that personally? I just don't understand. Moving to the next important issue regarding New START, a nuclear arms reduction treaty between the United States and Russia. As far as we can tell from Trump administration moves, Washington is not going to extend that treaty and is likely to withdraw from that agreement, just like it has withdrawn from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. That was Moscow's fault, by the way. At the same time, we see Pentagon announcing installing low-yield tactical nukes on its submarines. Should we expect another nuclear arms race in between Washington and Moscow? I believe that all those talks about all those treaties are not worth an eggshell. Those papers are useless. On one side, Putin shows us some cartoons, telling about 10 to 15 kinds of weapons such as Sarmat, Sharik and so on. All those weapons are not listed in New START, as that only includes ballistic missiles. On the other side, Moscow only needs those treaties for a status of a so-called great power. And regarding the thing you have mentioned, I mean locating low-yield missiles lower than 10 kilotons. That move will save us from a nuclear war. That war was openly planned by Patrushev and Putin. Their plan was to commit aggression against one of the Baltic states. NATO would mobilize and perform its duties according to Article 5. In fact, it already shows that by locating its battalions in each Baltic state and Poland, some reinforcements may be used in future. NATO's conventional level exceeds Russian. so the end of such conflict wouldn't favor Russia. But Moscow was planning a so-called de-escalation by means of a nuclear escalation. They would threaten NATO with using nuclear weapons and make it choose between its capitulation and a nuclear war against a person staying in other reality. Such scenario has been put to review dozens of times by many Western and particularly American think tanks. They have added a prognosis for that to the recent US military doctrine. It says that in case of such threat, the USA will not back down and reply to such tactical weapon use with a similar limited tactical strike. In order to show their readiness for such scenario, they have deployed that brand new type of weapons. As always, nuclear weapons are created not in order to use, but rather to convince a potential adversary to keep from using such weapons. That is what deterrence role means. Seeing those high rocket ships circling now along the eastern coast of America, those in Kremlin start thinking that the plan by Putin and Patrushev of that World War IV victory won't turn out successful. Anticipating your next question about that commotion, or even some hysteria in Kremlin during the recent weeks, let me confine myself with answering regarding that new nuclear strategy development. A nuclear strategy is not about missile strikes exchange, but rather about some virtual intellectual battle, without pulling a sword out, as was taught by Sun Tzu. That means demonstrating own possibilities without launching any missiles. So Americans have just demonstrated that they wouldn't flinch nor back up in case of Putin's aggression and implementing his World War IV scenario. I believe that such response by the US and Putin's World War IV plan failure is much of a reason for current tensions in Kremlin. That was Andrey Piontkovskiy. So, let us hope that due to Washington's strategy, the virtual nuclear war between the US and Russia won't grow to some real one. Drain what is full and fill what is empty. Take care of yourselves and your close ones. Meet you next time on Sotnik-TV.